Scott Hutchinson, thanks for sitting down with us. The Hutchinson business, as I understand it, started in 1911. Tell us about the origins of the business and where it came from.
Well, my great-grandfather came out in 1911, and it probably did start in 1911, but we've officially called it 1912 because that's the first building we've located that they built. He came out from a suburb in Manchester in England. He'd already been operating over there, but packed up and came out here. Not with a lot of money, but with enough to start a business. And he kicked off, and then his sons joined him when they became old enough.
And when did you know you wanted to get involved in the family business? Was that something you knew straight away, or did it come to you, as you got a little bit older?
I think when I was about 10, it became obvious that I could see what Dad was doing and my grandfather, and I saw that I could carry it on. So it was very early. I can't remember exactly when.
And so run us through, your childhood, some of your early moments within the family. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. It was suburban Brisbane. I went to sites, but I wasn't passionately involved in the business, but I loved going to the office as young kids do. It's stationery and it's machines and staplers and things. And yeah, I went to sites with Dad in his ute as well.
I understand you studied engineering at the University of Queensland around about 1981 or thereabouts, and then you went travelling for a little bit after that. Run us through that sort of...
I finished my engineering degree, civil engineering, in 1981, and then I worked for 3 years for a structural engineer to get my registration. And then with two mates we did the 12 months in a combi around Europe. It's not common now, but it was pretty much par for the course then.
And what were some of those travel, stories and moments like? Did they sort of inspire you to travel later in life as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the best year of my life. Yeah. It was wonderful. Getting up every day with two good mates and wondering what you're going to do today to entertain yourself is pretty good. I worked as a scaffolder when I got back to London for a month or so, but the year was about travelling.
And then you started working the business around about 1986?
I came back from Europe in 1985, and I'd started an MBA before I'd left to travel while I was working for the engineer. So I wanted to finish that off, so I went full-time in 1985 to finish off my business administration. Mm-hmm. Then I came into the business.
And what was your role in the business at that time?
Apprentice project manager, I suppose. They pushed me onto site, which was great, under who they thought was the best foreman. Mm-hmm. But Dad involved me in everything that he was doing, and so I was involved in everything, which was marvellous. Dad was great to work with. We were living together and working together and never had any problems. And
what did he teach you? What are some of the learnings that you took away from your father?
Wow, so much.
What do you say?
Well, he rescued the business when my grandfather and my great-grandfather were getting too old and were not changing. Mm-hmm. So his main lesson was to change, adapt and change. Look at what you're doing and see if you can do it better.
And obviously he changed the logo. Did he, change processes, systems, procedures, or? Well,
I think he mainly meant actual procedures and the way you do things on site. When he came in, my great-grandfather and grandfather were still had guys digging holes with picks and hoes, and when the Americans had brought in machinery. But change everything was his thing. Just keep on looking, keep on adapting.
And do you think that's been something that's sort of been a guiding principle for the business, ever since, when you took over and then after you took over and to the next generation as well?
Absolutely. I did every elective in the MBA I could on human resources. And what I tried to do when I came in, and Dad was fully supportive and had already had it going to some extent, is just to let the market forces run through the place. Try not to get a situation where you've got pyramid management, where the object of what people are doing is to impress people above them. Try and see if they can actually make money and finish a job on time and keep a client.
And so fast forward to today, about 1,750 odd staff and about $3 billion in revenue. How do you think you've got to that size? What's it taken to be able to get to a size of that business?
Hutchies doesn't have any turnover goals, profit goals, geographic goals, so it's really just happened naturally. Again, with the market forces running through the place. We've got 37 teams, and at any one time, 2, 3, 4 of them are expanding and or splitting into others, and others, some are collapsing because they can't work it out, or they've lost their clients, or the market's changed. We're very adaptive, and that's just how the turnover and the number of people has worked out.
And just coming in here today, your office is right at the front here, or near to the front, and you speak about sort of a flat line in terms of the management structure and all that sort of thing. How important do you think that is to the business?
Oh, that's the key. We have a very flat management structure, and that came out of 1980s management theory. And that came from me, but Dad already had that pretty much going. He just wasn't calling it that. And when I brought that theory in, Dad was reading all those books as well. So he was right into it.
And do you think the employees, the contractors and subcontractors all respond well to that sort of management system, rather than, being hierarchical and top down sort of thing?
Well, everyone loves flat management structure until they want to be up in the pyramid. So some don't like it, and you get some difficult times because you're trusting people and they make mistakes. You do get passion, and you get people that are feeling like they've got control of their lives, their working lives, and that's the key. Yeah, empowerment is the real key. Yes.
And the other thing, speaking of sort of empowerment and keeping employees on side, you do quite a lot in the way of social events, up to 50 a year, as I understand it. Tell us the thinking behind that.
We're at work a lot of our lives. Just make it as much fun as you can. And we used to centralise the social club activities, which was an employee initiative to start a social club. But now, if anybody's got a good idea to go to anything, we'll fund it if they'll organise it. So it's completely loose. But I'm a music fan, so I take most of our officers to festivals every year.
Where does your inspiration or I guess your interest in music come from? Because we'll touch on the sort of festivals and that sort of thing, but obviously you've got a deep-rooted sort of interest in history and that sort of thing. Yeah,
music I just loved. I can't play, so it didn't come from ability, but I just always loved going out to shows and celebration, enjoying celebration, and following bands and buying records and playing them at mates' places and discussing it. And I've always loved music. There's plenty of us out there.
And it's obviously continued on right until now. You've been to quite a number of festivals. Just got back from Burning Man, I understand it.
It's more than continued on. It's chronic. And Burning Man isn't quite. Burning Man is about radical self-expression, and I've been 10 times in a row. I'll never miss one till I die. But most of the festivals I go to are music festivals. Burning Man has music, but it's more about art and self-expression.
That interest in music has obviously taken you to the Fortitude in the valley there. Yes. Tell us about that. You've obviously been asked about it a lot, but tell us about, quick summary, why you wanted to leave something like that for the Brisbane community to enjoy.
Before that, we were just about to sell a smaller block to some developers to put 10 stories of units on. This is in Newstead. And the bass player from Powderfinger and a couple of associates came in and said, we'd love to do a music venue on this. It's in an old hangar from World War II. And I just pulled the sail as quickly as I could, did this one. This is an 800-person one called Triffid. Absolutely loved it. I loved the involvement, loved the industry. And then when I saw Brisbane in trouble, having no inner city big music venue after Festival Hall got demolished in 2003, which was insane, I thought, I'll do it. But to do it, I had to buy a site that had a DA for 350 units. So I had to pay for something that music couldn't afford. So it's ended up costing us about 46 million, and it just got valued at about 30, I believe. So it's not something that's commercial. And Triffid's the same. It's not commercial, but it only cost us about 5.5 million.
And how do you think the response has been to those?
Feeding the starving? Well, I thought people would be happy, but I've had a lot of people coming up like I've saved their lives. And
Really?
Brisbane doesn't have a lot going. It's got lots of little venues, but we push everything out to the sticks. Our main music venues in the wetlands past the airport.
Yeah.
It's terrible. That and the lockout laws that the government brought in, I thought somebody's got to do something or Brisbane will end up Dubbo without a zoo.
And so you've obviously, you're quite active in sort of the music scene, in the business scene as well. What else do you do? What sort of hobbies do you have outside of work? How do you relax?
I don't do boats or horses or those sort of normal luxury things, but I have a collection of pinball machines, which is a cheap hobby, relatively, and music. But I'm not actually involved in the music industry. I'm just the landlord propping things up. I'm the patron of Q Music, which I support financially, but I don't go organising bands or organising shows.
Right. What do you think of the construction industry at the moment? What trends are you seeing? What issues and challenges are you seeing?
The challenge at the moment, especially if you've been watching Four Corners, is quality. There was a boom. Too much was built too quickly. And I think we've got that really well sorted out. We were onto it 5 years ago. And we worked out that there was going to be this problem, and our managing director Greg Quinn just nailed it. We had quality people all over the place, making sure people got it right. We didn't get everything right, but we had the culture in early.
And then I guess the opposite of that, what sort of opportunities do you see, or do you see that the opportunity at the moment is limited? It's
counterintuitive, but builders do better when the market's coming off. Booms don't help us at all, and that's why our figures aren't that great. We're making under 1% of turnover. So I'm looking forward to it coming off. And getting back to quality, less turnover and a flight to builders with bigger balance sheets and better reputations that have been around longer.
And is there anywhere specifically where there's a focus for the business to expand, or I guess, to quieten down?
No. As I said before, we don't have any profit targets, we don't have any turnover targets, and we don't have any geography targets. We've done work in Japan, New Zealand and Canada, and then just come home because we haven't seen an opportunity. So we don't have goals. Our only goal is to do good work and to stay afloat and make every decision a long-term decision. Always look for the long term, and that's our aim.
Hutchies as a business obviously quite active in philanthropic ventures, in letting staff go out and contribute to different ventures and projects, but you're also a very socially conscious business. Tell us about some of the work you do, particularly with Indigenous employment and that sort of thing.
We've got a decentralised charity ideal where any company member can get help for their charity, depending on how well they're going at the time. But the Start on Yaga, which means start work in an Indigenous language, was an initiative of our Managing Director, Greg Quinn, and then the perfect, I believe, Indigenous manager, and this has boomed. It's basically training, development and placement of Indigenous people into jobs. It's not just training them and throwing them out there. It's placing them with us, with our subcontractors, and making sure that things go well for them. And it's been hugely successful.
And what's the response been again from the community? I mean, obviously it would have been overwhelming, and there would be a lot of these sort of Indigenous people that would be, extremely pleased with all the work that you're doing.
Well, Greg said when to the government, we are not going to do some box ticking exercise or some virtue signalling thing. We're going to do it where the rubber hits the road. And Mark, our Indigenous manager, has picked that up, and the response has been amazing. We've placed 350 people already, and we've got more to go. And we've got a great team in here, and we're doing it right around Australia, mainly in Queensland again, but also very strong in other towns.
Do you think there's a lot more that could be done by other businesses that could take on a similar sort of venture to what you guys are doing here, or has there been any other businesses that have seen what you've implemented and done it themselves?
I must admit, I've watched this and come along for the ride and got involved in Stardom Yoga. I haven't driven it. It'd be very hard for large businesses to do what we've got to do. A lot of Mark's decisions are tough love, and it'd be impossible for governments to do what we're doing. That's not a criticism, it's just the way it is. It's been amazing, and especially the reaction from large businesses that look at it and say, I wish we could do that. Yeah.
What do you think is the future of the construction industry? Where do you think it's going from here, or what changes need to be implemented to get it to the point where it needs to be?
I think the changes that are happening now are around quality and substantial builders. So governments and purchasers of buildings and units are looking for somebody to take responsibility and somebody to have the money and the backup and the balance sheet to sort things out if there's ever any problem, and will sort things out long term. So that plays beautifully into our hands. They're looking for long-term builders with big balance sheets that are committed to the industry for the next 100 years, not by fly-by-nights. They're trying to chase the fly-by-nights and the undercapitalised builders out. So I think that's the main change, and that's perfect for Hutchies.
And do you think phoenixing is obviously an issue that we won't see in the future, has been an issue in the past, but won't be an issue in future with changes that are being made?
Hopefully phoenixing will be stopped, I think, by market power and by governments. Or giving large jobs to small organisations that are undercapitalised.
What sort of mark do you want to leave on either Brisbane, on the music industry, or the business industry?
Brisbane nightlife from going to zero, and I think we've done that, or contributed heavily towards it. I'm not much of an industry figure. I still haven't done what my great-grandfather, grandfather and father have done in industry organisations. I have to do that. And I just want Hutchies to continue. I don't really need it to be any bigger than it is now. If it shrunk to 2/3 next year, it wouldn't worry us. We'll not go into the future.
Scott, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.